When you think of the most feared NHL players to ever hit the ice, your mind may tend to go toward the long list of heavyweight enforcers or even maybe the most talented scorers, but that is not all we're going to be talking about in this video. The players we're going to be talking about are Swiss Army knives. They can do it all. They have the ability to perform on the biggest stages, doing anything their team needed them to do to win. These players had an all-around game that made them the absolute best teammates to have and the worst opponents to play against. Keeping that in mind, here are the top 6 most feared NHL players. Terry O'Reilly. Drafted in 1971 in the first round, 14th overall, Terry O'Reilly played right wing for the Boston Bruins from 1971 through to 1985. His nonstop mentality and hard-hitting style made him one of the most popular Bruins of all time, and he earned the nickname Taz, short for Tasmanian Devil, which was given to him by teammate Phil Esposito. O'Reilly wasn't one of the best skaters, but he was one of those players who would always leave everything he had out there on the ice, and his presence was always felt without a doubt. Don Cherry, who coached Terry, was quoted as saying, "Terry typifies our team. He's tough, really tough, and that's why I like him." Now, of course, O'Reilly was known for mixing it up and thriving when the game got rough. I mean, the guy did record 2,095 penalty minutes throughout his career, but what makes Terry O'Reilly an even bigger threat was his ability to produce points. In all 13 seasons Terry played in, he never finished with less than 20 points, and the only season he finished with 20 points, he only played 19 games. Adding to that, Terry has hit the 50-point mark, the 60-point mark, the 70-point mark, and in the 77-78 season, he tallied a very impressive 90 points. Terry O'Reilly wasn't just a fighter and an agitator, he was a dangerous hockey player who scored 606 points in 891 career NHL games. Wendell Clark. With a blue-collar work ethic instilled in him while growing up on the family farm, Wendell Clark combined a physical style with a scoring touch. Those specific traits made him a fan favorite and one of the most exciting players of his generation. Wendell Clark was only 5'11" and weighed less than 200 pounds, but that didn't stop him from playing a physical style of hockey. 7 times in his career, he topped 100 penalty minutes in a season, never shying away from the physical challenge that the game brought on. His successful junior career attracted the attention of Team Canada, with whom he won a gold medal at the 1985 World Junior Hockey Championships in Finland. He also caught the eye of the NHL, particularly the Toronto Maple Leafs, who selected him first overall in the 1985 NHL Draft. After moving from defense to forward, Clark led the Leafs with a team-high 34 goals and 227 penalty minutes during his rookie season. With his crushing body checks and deadly wrist shot, Wendell Clark quickly made a reputation for himself across the league that he was a force to be reckoned with. He was named Leafs captain in 1991, and he held that honor until 1994. In his second season as captain, Clark led the Leafs to a heartbreaking Game 7 loss to Wayne Gretzky and the LA Kings. Now, although they lost, Clark was at his best during these playoffs. Perhaps his signature moment came in Game 2 of that series where LA Kings' Marty McSorley absolutely rocked Doug Gilmour with a vicious body check. Clark answered back by challenging McSorley to one of the most famous fights of all time. The following season, Wendell Clark recorded a career-high 46 goals and 76 points. Clark lasted 15 seasons in the NHL, and he never stopped playing with his intimidating physical style. In addition to his physical presence, Clark often put on display his offensive ability, scoring 30 or more goals in a season 5 times, including a career-high 46 in the 93-94 season. Eddie Shore. I always describe Eddie Shore as both the Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb of hockey, said Richard A. Johnson, the curator of the Sports Museum in Boston. He continued to say he had skill and charisma that made you never want to take your eyes off him, and also had a competitive ferocity that created this aura of imminent dread and contention that was always present. You always had the sense that something was going to happen when he was on the ice. Eddie Shore's ruggedness could not be questioned and, quite frankly, has gone unmatched. Case in point, during his Edmonton days before he played for the Bruins, Shore suffered a gash in his leg that required 14 stitches to close. The doctor told him to stay off the leg, but Shore ignored him, played in the next game, and busted all 14 stitches wide open, leaving his hockey pants soaked in blood. This guy was a different breed. Shore had 12 goals as a rookie and 62 goals over his first 5 seasons, going on to win 4 Hart trophies as the NHL's MVP and helping the Bruins win the Stanley Cup twice. You never knew what Eddie Shore would pull off next, which is precisely what made him so popular and exactly what the league needed at that time in order to get more eyes on the NHL. Ted Lindsay. Ted Lindsay stood only 5'8" and weighed 163 pounds, but he was one of the toughest and most intimidating players of the 1950s. Ted Lindsay's willingness to hit opponents and drop the gloves when called upon earned him the nickname Terrible Ted. When he wasn't spending the equivalent of more than 30 games in the penalty box, Lindsay was actually a quite gifted left winger who was the happiest in the corner of the rink, jousting and fencing and scrapping with his opponents. "My hatred was sincere," Lindsay told NHL.com, discussing his legendary distaste for his opponents on and off the ice. He continued to say, "I hated everybody. I had no friends. I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to win. It wasn't necessary that I score, but I figured I could be an integral part without scoring. I had ability, I had talent, and I didn't have an ego that I thought I was great. I realized I had to earn it. That was my purpose, to be the best that there was at the left wing position." Lindsay won 4 Stanley Cups with Detroit, won the Art Ross Trophy in 1950 as the top scorer in the NHL, played in the NHL All-Star Game 11 consecutive times. He was selected to the NHL First All-Star Team 8 times, and more impressively, he finished among the league's top 3 in goals and points several times throughout his career. He finished his career with 1,808 penalty minutes in 1,068 games with the Detroit Red Wings and the Chicago Blackhawks. He also scored 379 goals and 851 points and was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1966. Mark Messier. With his all-around talent and his ability to turn up the physicality of his game whenever he needed to, Messier established a wide cushion of space to work in during his 25-year NHL career. Messier possessed elite skill and elite speed while adding in a mean streak that often made him a handful for his opponents. His size and willingness to hit opponents earned him the nickname Moose. Messier helped the Oilers win the Cup 5 times in 7 seasons, and that last one coming 2 years after the Oilers traded Gretzky to the LA Kings. During his time in Edmonton, Mark had 8 seasons where he notched over 30 goals, 5 seasons where he hit over 100 points, and 6 seasons where he tallied over 100 penalty minutes. The guy was an absolute wrecking ball who would often find himself creating scoring chances, as he also tallied over 200 shots in 6 separate seasons. Now, you would think that this playing style would allow him to burn out quicker due to wear and tear on his body, but his elite production did not stop once he left Edmonton. In fact, Messier still had a lot left in the tank for his time spent with the New York Rangers, and in the 93-94 season, he led them to the Stanley Cup, making that his 6th in his career. Throughout his dominant career, Messier won the Ted Lindsay Award twice, the Hart Trophy twice, and the Conn Smythe Trophy once. Messier is considered one of the greatest leaders in NHL history and is the only player to captain 2 different franchises to Stanley Cup championships. Gordie Howe. Where do I start when discussing Gordie Howe? How about the fact that he was able to play in the NHL through 5 decades, starting from his teens and then ending in his early 50s? That type of longevity and ability to perform is scary enough to deserve this number 1 spot. During his time revolutionizing the game, Gordie Howe earned the nickname Mr. Hockey for simply being the player that everyone wanted to be. Gordie Howe made his NHL debut as an 18-year-old on October 16, 1946, scoring once and fighting twice. His reputation for toughness was built early and tested often. During his time in the league, Howe learned to stop looking for trouble, but he never backed down when it knocked on his door. One of his most legendary fights was against heavyweight Lou Fontinato in 1959, where Howe proved once and for all that it'd be best to not get under Mr. Hockey's skin. Gordie finished in the top 5 in league scoring for 20 consecutive seasons, starting from 1949 through to 1969. He became the first NHL player to reach 1,000 points and would retire from the Hartford Whalers in 1980 as the league's all-time leader in games played, all-time leader in goals, all-time leader in assists, and of course, all-time leader in points. Howe spent 1,685 minutes of his time in the NHL sitting in the penalty box. 4 times earning 100 or more penalty minutes in a season. He could come up behind you, gently slip his stick under your armpit, and effortlessly lift you up off the ice. Trying to muscle Gordie off the puck in the corner was akin to wrestling with a telephone pole, said Jean Beliveau of the Montreal Canadiens. Howe's legendary toughness and skill are immortalized in hockey today by the introduction of the Gordie Howe hat trick, which is when a player scores a goal, gets an assist, and has a fight in the same game. Now, when you have your own hat trick named after you, you know you must be the most feared player to ever play in the game. Thanks for watching our videos. Don't forget to leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button.